Hello, everyone. This is Steve, and I am here with Melanie Dragone. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
It is my distinct pleasure. So let's start out with this question. I'm referring to you as a freedom fighter. Is that how you see yourself?
I see myself as a health freedom advocate here in the state of New Jersey.
Has this been a lifelong dream, or is this something new? How did you get started becoming a health freedom advocate?
Not a lifelong dream, nothing I ever thought I would be involved in, to be honest. However, in 2007, I attended a presentation by a fellow New Jersey mom who was telling her story about her two sons who were vaccine injured. She was touring the state doing a 3-hour presentation, basically reviewing everything that she had experienced with her own two boys and sharing the message of educating and informing fellow parents about the dangers of vaccination and the possible adverse events that could occur, the lifelong illnesses that they could, um, in fact, impact your child with, a real education about the ingredients, about the manufacturing, about the history, about the 1986 law that gave shield of liability to the pharmaceutical companies. And this presentation in 2007 changed my life and impacted me in a way that I could never describe. I was pregnant at the time. And so 15 years ago, I connected with this woman personally. She became my mentor. And ever since that presentation, it became my passion and my mission to pay it forward, to educate and inform fellow parents to make informed medical decisions on behalf of themselves and their families.
So there was something operative in you at the time, 15 years ago, and she kind of lit that spark. So does that mean that up until that point you had kind of harbored some doubts about vaccines, but for some reason the spark hadn't been lit yet?
Absolutely. I have an undergrad in psychology, and I attended Monmouth University here in New Jersey. And there was a school on our campus that I was an intern at. And this was like the late 90s. And my job in that school was to shadow the one nonverbal autistic child in the school. One. It was an out of district placement. So that means their home district wasn't able to accommodate them. So they send the students to this out of district placement. And, this is the late 90s. Autism is kind of peaking. Um, my job is to shadow this one child. And then almost 10 years later, I'm having my own children, doing all the research on the car seats and the cribs and the bottles and nursing and, natural birth. And I never picked up a book regarding vaccinations. And at that time, there were schools specifically for autistic children. So within that 8 to 10 year period, it had gone from me shadowing the one nonverbal autistic child to 10 years later, where there were schools specifically for autistic children in the state of New Jersey. So to your point, in the back of my mind, there was always this, how did this happen? What was the impetus behind this explosion of autism in our state? And so, yes, I was always kind of questioning things, but was a new mom and somewhat fearful of germs and keeping my baby safe. And so I complied and basically adopted the conventional medical model that you brought your child in for well visits and just did what the doctor said to keep your child healthy. And those wellness visits that are not necessarily wellness visits. So yeah, there was this fire in me to kind of question things. And Louise, who's my mentor, she really was the impetus behind, me pivoting and changing my focus and seeking the opportunity to learn everything that she knew and to lock arms with her so that I could help other parents on this path.
Do you know, did Louise have a similar story? Was she somebody who was kind of incubating a concern that was like on a slow burn, and then due to circumstances, she met somebody who lit her spark as well?
Well, her children were already injured, and so that became her path. Her children were chronically ill, under 5 years old, and she went on a mission to figure out really the root of their illness. And in that journey, she's was able to uncover a lot of the issues with the vaccinations and a lot of the politics connected to it. So unfortunately, like many other parents, she didn't deep dive into this topic until her children were greatly affected. And so for me personally, because my path was different, and this fellow mom, was able to kind of sound the alarm for me, I am forever grateful. And so I feel as if I need to pay it forward because I was open to that information at the time, because not everyone is when they're faced with it. And always so grateful to her as an angel to me and my family, because I don't know what would have happened if I would have made different medical choices on behalf of my family. And also, I have made it my mission to pay it forward, right? To share this information with other people. And so in the last 15 years, I'm happy to say that I've empowered many parents to make informed medical decisions. And so, to Louise, the legacy of affecting and impacting numerous lives over the last 15 years, just through me personally, not to mention all the other people that she's impacted. It's really, it's a treasure.
That's marvelous. So it sounds like you're having some success. You're mentioning that you're empowering other parents. So it seems like a lot of parents are ripe for their sparks to be lit. Are you finding that parents now are a little bit more savvy about um, medical dangers versus medical wellness? Is the time right now for your mission?
It is right now, due to COVID and all the chaos and craziness that occurred during the COVID pandemic, whatever you want to call it. People were awakened to this medical model where you were given one remedy for this virus and coerced, really put into a corner to maintain your employment, to access restaurants, to be in social situations. The push that people really saw that maybe these weren't the best people to be listening to. So for our mission, with parents, as well as, what I do is connect with legislators as well, who are fellow parents sometimes, grandparents sometimes. Um, Before COVID, everything that we were educating parents about kind of seemed abstract. Like no one thought that we would ever be forced to be vaccinated, that you were just expected to receive the vaccines to attend public school. You would never be coerced or faced with loss of employment for a vaccination. And then COVID hit, and people were immersed in that, and the reality became tangible. And so people now understand that the government doesn't necessarily have their best interests at heart, and that they were pushing a emergency use authorization medical intervention with no long-term information or studies, and were expecting everyone to just comply. So yeah, right now, our community here in the state of New Jersey in particular has grown exponentially. And those parents who maybe weren't paying attention before and didn't recognize the significance of health freedom or medical freedom, especially here in the state, has grown exponentially. And so we try to be the vehicle to guide them, and we provide tools to help them reach their elected officials or representatives to help educate and inform them as constituents about this topic.
So a lot of parents are aware of concerns, but you're the vehicle, you're the guide, and you're on the mission. What do you think it is about you that led you to heed the call? How is it that you are somebody that's stepping up and are leading? Because a lot of people are not stepping up. They need to be led. Are you a natural leader?
Um, Perhaps somewhat a natural leader. I always want to give props to my husband for always being 100% supportive of my efforts. I do all of my advocacy work, for free as a volunteer. And so having that luxury to be able to do that and the support of my husband and my family to, be outspoken and to be a leader, in the state to help guide other parents is really a gift. And for me, I think it's just a passion within me as I see people being misled or coerced or pushed into this conventional medical model and not understanding that there are other options. And being a social worker by training, and having been in the schools, worked in the school districts, and seen, as I mentioned earlier, the expansion of these special ed services that didn't exist 20 years ago, I feel as if the alarms needed to be sounded. And I see myself as someone who can grasp information and kind of bullet point it or just make bite-sized, digestible pieces of information so that my fellow parents can read it, even if they're super busy or unable to digest all the information themselves. So I have taken on that role.
Do you find this passion and this mission to be draining? Do you find that there are days when you feel like, what am I doing this for? Or do you feel consistently strong and committed?
I personally feel consistently strong and committed. I have been doing this for so long and have seen the extraordinary impact of the grassroots efforts here in the state of New Jersey. In 2019 and 2020, we were the only state to protect and preserve the religious exemption, even though it was on the chopping block. And it had gotten further in that year than it had ever gotten in the, 13 years of advocacy I had been doing at that point. And seeing people rise up, physically be at the State House, making calls, just the networks of people who just did whatever they possibly could to make sure that we didn't lose the religious exemption. That image in my mind always keeps me going. Whatever comes our way, we have some method or some path to combat it. And the more people, in my opinion, who are aware of what's happening and we give them tangible tools to combat it, then, more successful that we're going to be collectively. And, this is all different streams of work, all different organizations in the state that are working in conjunction to protect and preserve health freedom. So it's definitely new bills come up every day. I'm on top of them and I see them as a challenge. And we brainstorm to figure out how we can tackle that challenge. And so every day it's a new adventure.
That's a marvelous attitude. In your own view of the world, do you take a larger view? Are there any religious slash spiritual slash other sources of strength that you call upon?
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of taking the pause, taking a breath and really taking that time to understand and, thank God for my opportunities to do this work, for my healthy children, for having been brought this issue, and having my heart open to the issue at the time is so significant because if I wasn't open, I don't know who I would be or where I'd be at this point 15 years later, or where my family or my children would be. Um, it's, you know, being guided to want to help, every mom and dad that I can come in contact with and sharing this message with them wherever they are in their journey. I don't expect anyone to change their life or change their thinking in one conversation with me. I try to meet people where they're at. And I thank God for that ability to, empathize with my audience and understand that it's not all or nothing, that this is a journey. And I'm happy to guide people on this journey.
So it sounds like you're serving as a guide. Do you feel that you are being guided?
I do, actually. I do. I feel compelled to do this work, as I mentioned before, because I want to pay it forward. I want to protect my children, generations to come, my grandchildren. I want to protect and preserve their rights to make informed medical decisions. So I do feel called to do this and to continue this work, not only for our generation here and everything that we're up against regarding COVID and all the craziness that we've been immersed in the last 3 years, but for generations to come. And my biggest motivation are my children because they are always watching. And so, when things get scary or, bills are being heard that we don't agree with, I can always pivot to them and say, I'm working on it. I'm in it. I'm on it. You know, Many times over the years, I have teenagers now, but over the years, they've been threatened with being kicked out of school. And, they're well aware of the world around them and what's happening. And I was always able to confidently say, like, I was working on it. Not that someone else was taking the reins, but I was working on it and guiding other parents to help as well.
It's marvelous. When people think about having an impact on generations to come, they're often thinking about what we call their legacy. Can you relate
Mhm.
to that term? Is this your legacy?
I'd hope so. I'd hope that my legacy is, being on the front lines of health freedom here in the state, but also a legacy for my children to have watched me do this work, boots on the ground, conversation by conversation, whether it be with peers or with legislators, on every level. And that really is my legacy, is my children's image of me and having been a part of many different parts of my advocacy journey, but understanding that they too have a voice. And no matter who you are, where you live, that you can impact and gather people to affect change. And that's really my legacy, I hope.
It's a wonderful legacy. My last question to you is this. Let's suppose that this setting right now is really you speaking in front of 300 parents
Hmm.
in a school auditorium, and a woman gets up and says, "This sounds wonderful, and I realize the importance of the mission, but I am really afraid.
Hmm.
I'm afraid of all of the criticism and the canceling and I'm afraid." What would you say to embolden somebody to deal with their fears of stepping up?
I would tell them that um, it's scary. It's scary not to just accept the conventional medical model. I would 100% empathize. with that, and help them understand that whatever they do medically with their own families does not need to be public information, and that there are ways to do advocacy where we collectively, locking arms, can affect change, and that they don't necessarily have to be outed, quote unquote, and be in the spotlight. There are ways to do this work and make small changes in your own life, in your own community, with your own representative, that leads to bigger changes. So for me, it's wherever this parent is on their journey, let's talk, because I'm here to guide you. And wherever you are, we can figure out how you can best impact protecting and preserving your health freedom.
That is certainly a message and a recipe for empowerment. And I think that Melanie, you have certainly clearly communicated that message. I know I personally find it inspiring, and for you to be doing this for so long and staying consistently strong throughout is a true inspiration. And I feel that many people that see this will watch this and say, there's something I could do, and give me Melanie's phone number, because I'm going to talk to her, and she's going to be my mentor.
Let's do it.
All right. So let me thank you so much for joining us, and more power to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate your time.
You are welcome.